Hey everyone, it's Sean from the Saving Your Future podcast, and today I'm going to talk about converting a 401k to a Roth 401k or Roth IRA. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. This podcast is based on my book, Saving Your Future, a step-by-step guide to wealth development. In that book, we talk about all aspects of preparing yourself for a financially secure future. So today, we wanted to talk about converting a Roth 401k or Roth a traditional 401k or traditional IRA into a Roth, and whether that makes sense. You might know that a while back I did a podcast episode on my hunch or thoughts with regard to the Roth IRA or Roth 401k. I'll just call it Roth or whatever one comes to mind, but I'm using them interchangeably. Essentially, though, based on the fact that our tax rates are really low now after the tax cut in 2018 that took effect in 2018, now might be a good time to do that conversion. So let's first define what it means to have a Roth versus a traditional. So with a traditional IRA or 401k, what happens is you take money that you earn and you essentially get to invest that money pre-tax. So what does that mean? Let's say you made $50,000 in a year and you put $10,000 into an IRA or 401k, and of course subject to limitations, but I'm just using numbers here. So you put in the $10,000, had made 50, you're treated as though on your tax return that you only made $40,000. So basically that $10,000 that you put away is tax deferred. Tax deferred means essentially that you're not going to pay the taxes now. You're going to pay the taxes in the future when you actually draw on that money in retirement. On the flip side, the Roth is kind of the opposite of that. So a Roth, in the same situation where you made 50 grand in that year, if you put 10 grand into a Roth, you're still going to pay tax on the 50 grand. So that's considered after-tax investment or after-tax investing. The benefit then comes into play upon retirement. So the idea is that when you retire, you'll be able to take that money out without paying the tax. So let's get a little bit more in detail in contrasting the retirement portion of the traditional versus the Roth. So in the traditional, just use that $10,000 as your example. Let's say in 10 years that doubles to $20,000, another 10 years it doubles to $40,000, another 10 years that doubles to $80,000. So let's say at retirement you have $80,000. Not enough money, and you can look at some of my other episodes on what you might need, and that'll tell you a little bit more there. But let's just use this as an example. In a traditional IRA or 401k, when you take out any money from that, you're going to owe taxes on all of it. Not just the $10,000 that you put in, but all the growth as well. So any money that you take out would be taxed at whatever your income tax rate applicable in that particular year of the withdrawal. So if you're in the 20, 30, whatever percent tax bracket, that's what you're going to pay in retirement. On the flip side, the Roth is going to allow you to take all of that money, including the gains, out tax-free. So that might be pretty interesting. That might be pretty tempting there. So I've been reading a book called The Power of Zero, and I highly recommend the book. I'm going to put the link to where you can get that book in the show notes below. But in that, they're actually talking about ways that you can use the fact that we have a low tax, currently have low tax rates, and the premise that in the future, based on the fact that our debt is so high, we'll need to raise income tax rates in order to pay for all the debt that the country is in. So if you believe that, and it seems logical, right, that the tax rates would go up. If you believe that they will, then it makes sense to pay the tax now and not pay it later on. So what you could do essentially is, let's say you put your $10,000 into your traditional IRA a number of years ago. And let's say at that time you were in a tax bracket such that, let's just use, for example, at the time you were in the 28% tax bracket. So that meant you made a little over $150,000. So when you put that money in, you saved 28% by putting that $10,000 in, or $2,800 you saved. Now, today, let's say it's 8 years, 10 years in the future from when you put that 10 grand in. If you decide to do a Roth, you can essentially, under Rule 72T, avoid paying the penalty because you're rolling it over into a Roth. So you don't have to worry about paying an early withdrawal penalty because you're not taking the money, you're just converting it. So if you took that money now, and let's say you're making around $155,000, your tax bracket is now 22% instead of 28%. So before you had a tax savings of $2,800. Now today you'd pay $2,200 to basically convert that money from tax deferred to Roth. And so basically you saved 6% by doing it now when the tax rates are lower. But the benefit on the other side of it, the flip side of it, is that when you retire, you should be able to get all that money out tax-free. So if you can convert your taxable account that you got a tax benefit a number of years ago into a tax-free account in retirement, and you can actually save some money in between, there's two deltas that allow you to consider how you've saved. One, in my example, I said it was 10 years ago you put in that 10 grand. So you saved that 28% of the 10 grand, or $2,800, 10 years ago. So theoretically, that $2,800 has grown significantly tax deferred. So whatever that amount of money might be today is additional money that you've had. And you've also been able to take a tax deferral for 10 years. So if you only have 10 years left in retirement, then you're only giving up 10 more years of deferral. I hope you're with me so far. So, but you've gotten that benefit, that tax benefit, for a while, so there's some value there. Now you're going to be able to convert that over and only pay 22%. What would you be paying in retirement? Assuming it's after 2026 when the current tax break, or the current tax law sunsets and we go back to what we were before, now your tax rates go back up. Now, the theory is too that, as we mentioned, with debt going up so much, that when that time frame comes, the tax rates will have to go even higher. And so, maybe the tax rates are at 30, 40, 50% or more. It sounds kind of high, but if you look back into the 70s and early 80s, the highest marginal tax rate was in the 90% range. So if we have to happen to go to that route, wouldn't it be better to take your deduction, or take your lumps, pay your tax now at the reduced tax rates, and then when the tax rates are higher later on, converting that so that you get all the rest of the appreciation between now and retirement, as well as all the money that you take out tax-free for a one-time reduced tax payment today, or not necessarily today, but at the next tax filing date. I wonder what you think about that. I would love to hear your comments. And if you have any questions on any of the topics of my book, if you're interested in the book, you can see below where to get it. If you're interested in The Power of Zero, I'll put a link to that book as well in the show notes. But would definitely be interested in hearing your comments and what your thoughts on the subject is, and whether or not you're following, trending to what I'm saying. I will also put the links to where you can see the old tax brackets, because I find sometimes seeing this information in front of you makes it a little bit easier to digest and follow. But essentially you're going to be able to kind of trend and follow there to see where what would have been 28% before tax is now only 22%, and therefore that difference in savings, you save the tax before, now pay it back at a lower rate, and so that in the future you can save it once again. I hope you found this episode interesting. Definitely go back and check some of my other podcast episodes and subscribe so you'll know about the new ones when they come out. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.